Scott. Fincher was calling his colleague. I brought alcohol. He said, looking around and carrying a bag with something in one hand, in the other a box with bottles of green glass with a burning liquid inside. As he was surprised to notice the left tablet and the tool without attention. Where did he go? The man was puzzled. He is not one of those people, the man thought, looking under the fighter, who abandons what he started halfway. I'm in the maintenance room. Scott's voice came from somewhere to the side and from a distance. Fincher was surprised. Nevertheless, he went to the maintenance room and looked inside, passing the door that was open to swing open. Why did you go there? He asked the question into the darkness. I had to find something. Scott's voice came out of the darkness again. What are you doing there without a light? The man was puzzled, but he stood at the door and did not move from his place. I need to move something. Help. His partner's voice rang out again from somewhere in the depths. Oh, that's it? Fincher muttered discontentedly and, with a dejected sigh, headed deeper into the room. He walked straight, lighting his way with a flashlight so as not to fall and immediately find a partner. Or even reprimand at all. Hey, what the hell are you doing here? A man with light brown hair snorted, highlighting the way. But in the place where he expected to see his partner, there was only another flashlight lying unattended. Hey. Why here? The sandy-haired man started and pulled his hand towards the unattended flashlight. When suddenly something viscous, warm landed on his back. A feeling as if something was flowing down, dropping drop by drop, stretching from the shoulders down the spine. And the smell. Suddenly, the smell of metal seemed to fill the room. And not the one that usually came from the hardware in this room, they have more of a smell of fuel oil, gasoline, right there it is metallic. What? The man was puzzled and immediately touched himself, where a strange feeling was once present. He removed his hand from the back of his head and looked at the open palm. That's what this metallic smell is in the air. The palm is almost all scarlet. Blood? He asked aloud. He voiced a guess that is as clear as day. What? Stuttering, he shouted, and goosebumps already ran down his back and continued to beat with a small tremor. He was still sitting on the floor, his legs seemed to be shackled by some invisible fear that swept over his head like water that suddenly arrived. He turned the flashlight sharply in the direction where he caught a strange sound. The sound is like liquid dropping drop by drop to the floor. He shone the light in this direction and, alas, not a flattering picture appeared to him. Eyes raised to the top so that the iris of the eye is barely visible behind the eyelid. Released capillaries on the surface of the protein. Haggard cheeks, as if the victim had been starving for a long time or all the juices had been sucked out of her. Her hair is a little disheveled. From the eye sockets, bloody tears flow down the cheeks and, mixing with the blood on the neck section, it falls to the floor in a viscous stream. I'm here. I've already said it in a broken imitator's voice. I was on the ceiling, holding on with the help of tenacious paws. In one of the long powerful paws, right in front of the next victim, I hold the severed head of the so-called Scott. How wonderful it is to watch the grimace of horror that immediately appeared on his face. I did not wait for something and immediately rushed at the victim who wandered into my trap, ripping open his belly right there. Do I have a talent for fishing? Or should I say hunting? I thought, tearing off pieces of fresh flesh over and over again and savoring them. Imitation. What a cool ability. I thought, continuing my feast. Torn off the top of the body, with intestines and other entrails spilling out on the floor. The head is open like a jar of stew, from which a jelly-like brain is now peeking out. The head is frozen in mute horror, only a trickle of blood flows from the mouth to the floor, forming a scarlet puddle. Among the creatures that the head of the logistics department tried to smuggle out were red worm larvae. Red worms are giant earthworms that live on desert planets. And having the ability to imitate sounds made by other living beings. An alien creature similar to a horse, but not quite. On the head there is something similar to a bone covering a shield, so to speak. On both sides of the head at the mouth there are two medium-thick short tentacles. The animal makes a sound, and something hiding under the embankment repeated it exactly. Rumor has it that these creatures have evolved to hunt other creatures more effectively in harsh realities. A huge creature whose head is divided into several parts, like a flower bud, but on each of its petals, there are rows of small sharp teeth along the edge. He easily swallows his victim whole. It's great that I managed to get hold of the essence of the red worm gene, I thought, feeling a neoplasm in my larynx inside. However, the resulting ability is inferior to the original one. I can only imitate the voice of the last victim. I thought as I put Fincher's head in my mouth. Well, it's a great skill anyway. Tomorrow I'll have to eat someone from the catering. I pondered over the plan of action, devouring my captured victim piece by piece. It seems. Is his name Pierre? I recalled the information I had heard before, which I had specially collected for further actions. I don't think he's close to Fincher, but it's not that important. Tomorrow I'll have dinner with Pierre. I thought, licking the remains from my paws and fantasizing about the taste of my next delicacy. I hope the bubble is doing well. I slowly but surely began to unscrew the loose bolts and slowly unfasten the grill, thereby freeing myself up again into the ventilation hatch. Although it is rather strange to refer to it simply as bubble. I mused as I made my way through the ventilation hatch. From now on, I'll call him number 26. Maybe you should look at him before you go to the nest? I moved slowly but surely through the ventilation, trying not to make a lot of noise and not attract too much attention. Hi. Suddenly, I was hit by an electric shock from a voice suddenly appearing in my head that I even stopped and did not continue on my way. Is this really how the psychic organ works? I thought immediately. After all, only recently my thoughts were about number 26, and now I have contacted him telepathically. I didn't think I would be able to communicate with beings who talk through waves. In any case, the tentacles under the head on the back of the head immediately moved. You should say hello. I let out a hiss that meant, hello, on waves captured only by the bubble. Hi. He answered again. And today I'm hungry. Food. This guy's vocabulary has grown significantly since the last meeting. I reasoned after what I heard. Does psionium have an effect that I don't know about? I let out a hiss that meant, sorry. I continued the dialogue, making my way further along the ventilation. I let out a hiss again, which meant, it would be difficult to get food today. What is the difficulty? The bubble was perplexed. I let out a hiss, which meant, I won't be able to get it, followed by my answer immediately. Whimper. It came from number 26. I understand he's disappointed. I was thinking, making my way further and further along the ventilation hole. But it's dangerous to use this passage now. After the disappearance of the body of the head of the research team, the head of the security department increased the security of the laboratory to the maximum. I was still thinking, moving in the right direction. Now even the ventilation shaft above the laboratory is a threat. Because of this, I haven't been able to bring him a candy bar for several days. I thought and sighed heavily, realizing the whole situation. All I can do is talk to him. I let out a hiss, which meant, I'm leaving. I gave my voice again. While. Come again. It was only me who answered. TSK, hang in there. I mentally wished him and headed away from the laboratory. I will be able to help him only after evolution. I began to think, moving away from him. The problem is that it is quite difficult to evolve. The user needs to kill 10 representatives of 2 intelligent races each and get gene essences from them. This is the only way to evolve. There are only humans on this ship, so evolution is impossible. I was thinking, turning again at the fork of the tunnel. There are still pirates, but nothing is known about them yet. Suddenly, with the help of the impulses of my locators, I felt that a person was walking under me, or rather under the ventilation branch in which I was, and talking about something on the phone. I immediately tuned into this droning in order to hear it more clearly. It was none other than the head of the crisis management department. Work? I'll get in touch. I recognized fragments of dialogue. Nearby. S. Oh, yes, this is the head of the crisis management department. I thought immediately. Who is he talking to there? Yes, everything is going according to plan. The man spoke again. Yes, yes. And? Suddenly he tensed, hearing something in the headphones, which are not immediately noticeable to the eye, and stopped. Did the order come from the family? He was surprised at the same time. No. The man stammered and closed his eyes. Who am I to doubt? And sweat broke out on his face. In any case, everything is going well. Mrs. Kisaragi has already been eliminated. He told the information and quickened his pace. The ship will arrive at S08 according to the plan. All orders of Captain Meteor are recorded. I heard it again. What? I tried to keep up with him and followed him. Yes, it's all right. The man said again and put his palm to the small reading screen. The screen lit up with a bunch of twisting bright blue lines. Everything should go according to the will of the family, or to be more precise, G and Eugene. I'll be happy to accept it. He spoke again and headed into an open passage to another room. Understood, before the connection. It turns out that this little man is a sneaky fox. The significance of this conversation began to dawn on me. So the bastard had betrayed the captain. Judging by his conversation, is he up to something? I think I'll have to wait and watch him to see if his actions will benefit me or harm me. Head of the security department. The captain shouted again in raised tones. How the hell do you do your job? Sorry. A blond man in a uniform and gray shades began to mumble in response. How many times have we heard these apologies? The captain of the ship did not let up. The meeting with the pirates is in 2 days. And you still haven't found out anything. We have increased the number of surveillance cameras and security. The head of the security department spoke. To hell with it. The captain immediately shouted back. Head of the navigation department. How many people are missing? The captain asked a question to the man next to him. 8 people, a brown-haired man with thick eyebrows answered after a moment. Including the former head of the logistics department. The head of the research group is dead. The captain of the ship continued to be indignant. 7 more people were missing. Why haven't you found the culprit yet? Are you in cahoots with him? No way. Stuttering came the reply. I was sitting at this time in the ventilation hatch and enjoying watching what was happening. I'm sorry, I thought, putting my short paws to my mouth, but the criminal is next to you. Damn. The captain of the ship swore. He gritted his teeth in displeasure, but did not raise his voice. I think the head of the security department is not lying. The head of the crisis management department spoke. What did you say? The captain immediately asked, turning to the brunette with the scar. I also checked everything. The head of the security department did everything he could. The head of the crisis management department immediately answered. The criminal has not been caught, the captain said aggressively through his teeth, and you are also protecting him. The captain was surrounded by an unkind aura, which, in principle, was to be expected in connection with what had happened. I want to say. The head of the crisis management department spoke again. By human standards, the dark-haired man with the scar said, no one is able to hide such a thing. The metal gremlin is just a rumor, he continued to express his point of view. Perhaps we were attacked by someone we don't know about. I was surprised, still watching what was happening. Why has the atmosphere become so strange? Listen, said the head of the navigation team, the head of the crisis management department. The AI installed on the ship used to be on the battleship. If there was any living creature on board, it would have been discovered long ago. The brown-haired man told his guess. I served in the army, I know how AI works. The brunette replied, crossing his arms over his chest. However, everyone knows about the container, which the head of the logistics department was able to carry out. All the cryo chambers were empty. An empty container is just a cryocamera without anything and a pile of torn boxes. Where did those who were in them go? The head of the crisis management department asked, providing new information. That's it? I cursed mentally. What I was most afraid of happened. According to the present head of the security department and the head of the technical team, it became clear that the news for them was not particularly joyful and now sounded publicly. Well, the captain spoke most calmly, which is quite surprising. Suppose a space monster is running around the ship. The question is, where is he wandering, since no one has seen him? There is a place, the dark-haired man with the scar immediately exclaimed, which we have not yet examined. He pointed somewhere up there. Ventilation? A whisper swept through the office when everyone immediately looked for the pointer. Ventilation shafts are located throughout the ship. The head of the crisis management department spoke without lowering his hand. In addition, they are about a meter high, which is enough for comfortable movement. Meter? There were immediately questions from the side. It's not enough to kill someone, isn't it? The metal gremlin is 80 centimeters tall, the dark-haired man with the scar explained, but it can destroy an entire battleship. Is this guy's name Arnold? I immediately began to recall, not very happy with the news I had heard. I should have taken the risk and eliminated him while I had the chance. If that's the case, they immediately started questioning the brunette based on the information they heard, as you say, then are we in a complete ass? If this thing ate the body of the head of the research team, we're finished. Just take it live and hand it over to Noble Capital. The head of the crisis management department calmly replied. If it can be established that it was he who ate Kisaragi Eugene, then they will believe it. And what to do with pirates? The head of the technical team immediately asked. If there is no body, then we will have to fight him. The dark-haired man with the scar spoke. To win the war, you need to control the situation from the inside. And in order to protect people, it is necessary to deal with the monster. At this time, the captain sat and listened attentively to the conversation of his subordinates, thinking about something. How many soldiers do you need? The ship's captain finally voiced his question. I'll take 6 people out of 8 squads. The dark-haired man with the scar calmly replied. "All right, I'll let you." The captain spoke. "I hope the inspection of the ventilation shafts will bear fruit. Thank you." The head of the crisis management department answered only briefly. At that time, I was already trying to retreat from this place in order to think about the course of further actions faster. Judging by Arnold's identity, he will put a guard on the ventilation, I thought, twisting the bolts. But the ventilation compartments are actually sealed. Even if you reach the end, there is nowhere to go. I was still thinking the same way, fixing the grid on the opposite side of the shaft. There is a surveillance camera in the corridor, and the ventilation passage is blocked. If I leave the nest, I'll have nowhere to go. I deftly bounced down the pipes and went down. The corridors are crammed with CCTV cameras, and the ventilation shafts are unusable. It's time to make a choice. I landed on the already solidified green slime that lined the nest and headed into its depths. Run away? Or resist? He was puzzled and lay down, folding his smaller paws under his head. My upper body sank deeper into the muck, or rather into the cocoon formed with reddish growths on the walls. Closing my eyes, I again remembered the words of this man, which began to flash in my brain like pictures, and his voice was on hearing. By human standards, no one is able to hide such a thing. I remembered again how he pointed to the place where I was hiding, as if he could see right through. Ventilation shafts are located throughout the ship. In addition, they are about a meter high, which is enough for comfortable movement. His amber eyes gazing upward. A look that seems to look into the soul. Just take it, live, and hand it over to noble capital. If it can be established that it was he who ate Kisaragi Eugene, then they will believe it. Anger shot through me. I clenched my teeth hard with indignation, and my eyes lit up with an unkind scarlet light. Take it alive? Amorpha. I was indignant, getting more and more angry at the course of their thoughts. The train of thought of these stupid mortals. It seems that they perceive me as some kind of wild animal from the most ordinary planet. A hostile space creature can bite the neck of its enemy, I argued indignantly, emitting steam from its mouth, even if its limbs are cut off and only one head remains. Such is the amorphous. I will fight. I opened my mouth and let out a cry of indignation, baring my sharp teeth. I'll show you how reckless and stupid the idea of taking an amorpha alive is. Especially with a small number of soldiers. I raised my paws up, assuming the stance of a monster ready for anything. Show these mortals your superiority. And in the ventilation shaft. I use all possible means. And I'll show you what hell looks like in space. I rested my paws on the floor and let out a kind of signal. Similar to what I used to emit with my mustache, I have done the same at the moment. It's not for nothing that I built a nest in this junction of pipes that run around the entire perimeter of the ship. Connection. Many bands of energy dispersed from me in different directions immediately. They followed like bright red-black arrows, but visible only to my eye and no one else. The ship's personnel began to explore the ship, starting with the search of compartments and ending with tracking the location and movement of enemies. It was as if I saw with my own eyes directly. Two figures of men follow along the corridor. A woman from the laboratory is heading towards them. If we assume that a ship floating in space is a living being, then I am no different from a parasite in the brain. My red and black communication arrows envelop the entire ship. I know everything and I don't have a gap in this snare. I don't have blind spots. After all, I know what's going on the ship, as well as its owners. The captain and department heads gather on the bridge. A spacious room with a lot of equipment. 3 people walk around the perimeter, studying something through a tablet in their hands. 2 in the corners of the room drive some information into computers. Since Arnold is also here, he must be taking command. Armed soldiers also started moving. A group of 3 men in snow-white protective clothing are heading through the tunnel. Most likely, these are those who were ordered to study the ventilation shafts. As expected, the group split up. We have decided on the main points of the plan. I was thinking, still studying the movement of people on the ship. I will deal with everything else along the way, depending on the movement of the enemy and his weapons. I closed my jaws and lowered my head. Well, now we can go meet the guests. A1 is in position. It was heard in the speaker. Team A starts the operation. The screen reflects the windows from the surveillance cameras, as well as in one of the windows, a plan of ventilation shafts with tracking of the fighters sent there. This is the operations room. The brunette with the gathered hair on the back of his head spoke. He tracks the movement of the fighters in the mine, as well as whether any danger is approaching by the cameras, in order to immediately warn them in time. B1. In position. The B1 command starts the operation. B1, the connection is bad. Study everything carefully. From the computer screen, the same picture is displayed on a huge screen, which is also watched by the ship's captain and the head of the security department among the standing people. This B1. Accepted. If you see anything suspicious in the distance, report immediately. Most likely, the dark-haired man with a scar thought, also watching what was happening. Lady Kisaragi was killed by a monster. Initially, I had to deal with its elimination. The plan remains unchanged, but the number of variables should be reduced as much as possible. The head of the crisis management department decided and immediately frowned. We can't let anything happen before Mr. Eugene arrives. The monster. You will die before today is over. The dark-haired man with the scar was thinking, not taking his eyes off the screen. A1, there is a fork ahead, head to the right. They spoke the hint into the microphone again. B1, you also have a fork ahead, move to the right. V3. The connection is not very good. The guy with his hair in a ponytail spoke again. Check it out and move on. Accepted. We will contact you as soon as we finish all the work. The route is difficult, the head of the crisis management department said aloud. Let them move cautiously. This is the operations room. The guy immediately started talking into the equipment. Take your time, search carefully. The dark-haired man with a scar grunted, something strained him in what he saw. In V3, the camera shows the same thing. Let him check it out. Immediately, he instructed the dispatcher to hand over to the armed personnel. I'm listening. A short reply immediately followed. Q3, check the camera. The boy immediately passed the instructions into the microphone. But there was only silence in response. This is the operations room. V3, I repeat. Check the camera. It's all right. It came from the other end, but the visibility of the camera was quite murky. B2, unite with B3. The guy with the ponytail on the back of his head immediately gave instructions behind you and continue moving. B2, accepted. Immediately there was an answer on the other end. B1 remained standing in place. B2 went straight to B3, while B3 was supposedly on the move. B2 was approaching B3 at an accelerated rate. Sensors showed that B3 and B2 collided with each other, which is what the commanders wanted. But before they could give instructions or listen to the report, a heart-rending human scream filled the room, plunging the captain, the head of the medical team and the head of the crisis management department into horror. The heart-rending scream continued, so loudly, so sharply and for a long time, already breaking into a wheeze. B2. The boy at the control panel immediately exclaimed. What happened? It's here. There was an immediate response. It only again managed to be heard the same way. But it was interrupted again by a terrifying scream. Arnold listened to this in silence, but only gritted his teeth with indignation at what was happening. V3, the connection with B2 is lost. The boy exclaimed into the microphone again. Report the situation. It dragged B2 away. There was a response, and the camera screens rippled from the loss of signal. There is nothing on the screen, please provide details. Due to the sudden attack, it is impossible to check the area. There was a response to the request. The head of the technical team and the head of the security department stood arriving in horror and only gasped for air, like fish thrown on dry land. Hey, signalman. They exclaimed immediately, moving away a little from the shock. What's going on there? Well. The guy with the ponytail stuttered and jumped on the spot from suddenness. Why are you did he manage everything so quickly? A soldier in reinforced equipment could not answer, thoughts swarmed in the head of a brunette with a scar, driving him more and more into horror as he was attacked. Even for experienced killers, it's not easy to cope with this. He clenched his fists until they crunched, not stopping to think about what had happened. What had happened filled his head. I thought it was a wild animal, but how wrong I was. It's more agile than I thought. Signalman, tell everyone. The head of the crisis management department immediately exclaimed. To open fire in case of the slightest movement. Let B1 unite with B3, find B2 and report on the situation. Yes, the head of the department. The signalman immediately responded. This is the operations room. V3, the signalman said again, temporarily stop looking for B2 and unite with B1. Accepted. There was an immediate response. B1 has teamed up with V3 and we are starting to search for B2. The soldiers reported again. Accepted, B1. The signalman immediately replied. The brunette with the scar immediately began to think what could happen at such a pace and what it would be better to do as soon as possible because not only others on the ship, he could also become a potential victim. If this continues, everyone will die. B1 was standing still while B3 was speeding towards him. It's B1, I hear something. A voice rang out. This is the operational room, the signalman immediately responded. What kind of sound do you hear? I'm not sure, but something is definitely coming. There was a reply, and his camera was displayed on the screen. Everyone immediately tensed up and did not take their eyes off the screen. It is not possible to set a goal because of the fork. The answer started from the other end, but suddenly the voice stopped. B1 corrects. The voice came again from the other end. Sound source B3. The dark-haired man with the scar immediately sighed contentedly. I hear the voice of B3. They said it again from the other end of the wire. Ugh. The signalman sighed with relief. This is the operations room. B1, report back when you merge with V3. But there was only silence in response. B1? The signalman spoke again. Only one of the walls of the ventilation shaft was visible on the screen. V3 was dragged away by the enemy. The silence was broken again by a voice from the other end of the connection. What? The head of the crisis management department immediately exclaimed. And those present in the room were again seized with horror. Step. Another step. One more. This is the head of the department. The dark-haired man with the scar spoke, snatching the headphones and microphone from the signalman. Report the situation. It all happened so fast. There was an answer. That I couldn't see anything. Fuck. Arnold swore, outraged by what was happening. He pressed the headphones harder to his ears, and wreaths of anger appeared on his forehead. He's right under your nose, and you don't see him? He exclaimed angrily immediately in response. Sorry. It sounded on the other end. The signalman and the head of the medical team turned in his direction. Damn. The head of the crisis management department swore and threw the headphones on the table. No, it can't be. He shouted in his mind, breathing fast, as if without the opportunity to breathe deeply. Maybe it was always there, and we didn't notice? It slowly reached the man. At the same time, it did not get on cameras B1 and B3. The dark-haired man with the scar was thinking, and his face was covered with perspiration. It's impossible for a monster to intentionally avoid shooting. He didn't say anything out loud, but the signalman was afraid to touch him or say something. No, wait a minute. Suddenly, the head of the crisis management department came to light. He took the headphones from the table quite calmly. I put them on my head, setting up a stray wave. This is the head of the department. He spoke, holding the earpiece with a microphone. B1, please state your full name. He spoke quite calmly. What? There was an answer from the other end of the wire. I repeat. The dark-haired man with the scar spoke calmly again, which made the captain who was standing next to him tense up at that time. He didn't understand what was going on and what Arnold was chazzing. B1, identify yourself now. Oops. There was almost not the same voice that once before. He distorted a little, thereby shocking Arnold. Gotcha? His guess was correct. One of the screens was covered with cobwebs from the fact that the eye of video surveillance was broken. And on top of the broken lens lay a four-fingered paw of a purple hue. Oh. The head of the security department and the head of the medical team stood with their mouths open and could not say anything out of horror. They almost became afraid to breathe. The screen immediately hissed and became covered with small ripples from the lack of a signal. This also scared the head of the technical team, which caused him to fall to the floor. This is A1. It sounded in the headphones. But the head of the crisis management department arrived in severe shock, covered with perspiration and afraid to say anything. It was as if he had swallowed his tongue from the shock he had experienced. What the hell is going on? One of the soldiers exclaimed again. This is A1, please answer. The voice rang out again. The brunette with the scar did not waste time for a long time, clenched his teeth with anger. The B team is finished, I thought, destroying one of the surveillance cameras. I got a tip from number 26 and disabled the means of communication with the help of waves. I reasoned while in the ventilation shaft, smeared in the blood of my victims. In front of me there are 3 bodies in a pile with their heads cut off or rather torn off. Because of these waves, V3, who was walking behind, heard interference. He sat down and, taking off his protective helmet, immediately began to examine it for the cause of the breakdown. I eliminated the soldier who was repairing the equipment, my sting immediately stabbed into his neck, and green stripes swelled under the skin, spreading across his face. With the help of the new combined skill poison glands. After that, everything went like clockwork. Thanks to them, I ate heartily. Continuing to recall the course of my actions, I devoured one by one the heads of my fallen victims. Next in line is the A-team, I thought, and immediately grinned, anticipating what was coming. Look where they are. I sent the pulse waves again in order to track my victim and think over the course of action. Waves of turquoise hue immediately filled the ventilation shafts, as if probing everything in search of the object I was looking for. Found. I immediately exclaimed mentally, seeing a group of soldiers walking in the palm of my hand. In full combat readiness. And no wonder. I thought and immediately ducked into a branch of the mine. Team B didn't know anything about me. However, now the enemy knows that I can imitate a human voice. I slowly but surely made my way through the mine, following my objects of observation. Is it possible to turn the current situation in my direction? I made my way to the area I needed and immediately took up a position, looking around the corner to see if my potential victims appeared on the horizon. There is a fork on the way, from where the A-team will appear. They'll be here soon. I was thinking, hiding. They say knowledge is power, is it really so? I thought and grinned, watching the terrain from around the corner. Incomplete knowledge can be poison.